Deep Mind for business, that whole program, how can I implement that and how does that work for my clientele?
Yeah, so there's a lot of options out there to get started with artificial intelligence. A lot of people are looking at it from a workflow perspective, startup perspective, public services, you just name it. AI is everywhere. One of the things that your customers and my customers are going to eventually come to realize is that nothing has been personalized to them.
Right, right.
So what has been delivered to billions of people, but this personalized aspect of it, which I call is the 80-20 work, 80% has been delivered to you, 20% you have to do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nature of business. Nothing has changed about that, right? Some things you have to do for yourself, some things has to be done for you, right?
Right, right.
So that 80-20 work kind of shifts that paradigm of how much do I have to do for myself now, right? So previously, you'd have to rely on a subscription in order to have those things done for you. But now you can look at it and say, like, well, if I can do this for myself, how much money do I save because those subscriptions are no longer needed? Just to kind of give you an example, in the Wall Street, they call it SaaS apocalypse. What that
Uh-huh.
means is that the SaaS companies are really feeling the burn because they charge the business per seat. So if you have a business that has 50 employees and 50 employees are owning a subscription, $20 a piece, that costs a lot of money for a business that is buying that subscription. So now it's reversing because now you can create those SaaS applications or software that you subscribe to for yourself, right? So if you look at your whole supply chain of all the things that you subscribe to, few things could be done by you now, right? And those things requires a systematic understanding of even if I do it for myself, what sort of damage am I going to make for myself if I don't know what I'm doing, right?
Uh-huh.
So this conversation that we're having right now, I mean, we had it offline, is that you have lots of opportunity, but you have to learn how to optimize it for yourself. And if you optimize it, you have to accept the risk that you're taking, or just say, that's not worth my time. I'm just gonna go ahead and keep the subscription that I already have.
AI, they don't know how to get into it. They're afraid, or the most they know is Chat GPT, which is on an open AI platform. You and I, we can go and geek out about this, but I'm going to pretend like I'm the person that doesn't know. So speak to me as a person who's like, listen, and of course you see the platinum here, right? So some of my colleagues and friends, they're a little worried. They're worried that they're kind of even aged out, or they're teched out of the space a little bit, and they want to implement AI, but they're not necessarily sure how to keep themselves relevant, and they have a fear beyond using Chat GPT or some chatbot or whatever. What would you say to that person who needs to take the next step and maybe do some AI cloning, maybe have a process, improve their manpower by using the intelligence of artificial intelligence and whatnot? How do they get into it? And then next after that, I think I'll ask you about some of the tools and whatnot. But how do they overcome that fear and understand that it's not coming to take their jobs away, it's not coming to take over their lives, whatnot? It's actually a benefit to help them 10x what they do, rather than something they need to be afraid of.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in three different phases, right? One is that we're calculating mentally the cost of missed opportunity, and
Mm-hmm.
then we're selecting tools as phase two, right? And then
Right,
on the
right.
phase three, we realize that we have taken way too much risk and there's no optimization here, right? So if your friends are looking at the cost of missed opportunity, which is driven by the fear of missed opportunity, right? They're calculating the fact that I'm in a business and this is how much I have operational expenses wise, my OPEX. I need some CAPEX in order to adopt an AI. So many questions they have to calculate. And then they move into this phase of like, okay, let me actually go through the tools. So they go through the tools after tools after tools, which if you stick with ChatGPT and you stay with ChatGPT, you are calculating the cost of missed opportunity of not using other systems that are not ChatGPT, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned cloning, that's the digital twin capabilities. Digital twin capability is not going to come because you use ChatGPT. Digital twin is a capability that you have to develop knowing your business workflow, your process, your day-to-day operation, your previous historical information that you have, your bank lending relationship. I mean, just name it all, right? That's what
Mm-hmm.
digital twin requires. So if you look at it from the perspective of managing the risk as the last part of it, is that even if you do chat GPT, even if you buy digital twin, even if you buy all these other tools, can you sustain those, right? Are they sustainable? If they're sustainable, are they scalable, right? Do they have interoperability built into it? So just to give you an example, ChatGPT as of a few days ago has connection to Plaid. Plaid means it gives you connection to your bank account in ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of downloading a bank statement, ChatGPT will literally go into your bank account and figure out your expenses from 5 years ago and how that has improved over the last 12 months, right?
Right.
So this sort of risk taking that you're doing, now think about the risk that is these are data that ChatGPT has, but you don't.
Mm-hmm.
If you had it and you had it in a way that is structurable, now you can create a digital twin, the clone piece that you mentioned, right? That AI clone that has all this data. So if ChatGPT doesn't give it to your AI clone, all of a sudden the AI clone is blindsided by the information that ChatGPT has about your banking, but it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's kind of like you don't know about your own bank account information. How would your AI clone know that?
Right.
ChatGPT knows, but that's ChatGPT's advantage, not yours, right? So there's many ways to think about it, but it's all about understanding the opportunities, optimizing them, and then understanding the risk on how to lower the risk so that way you can make more money or save more money.
Absolutely. Emerging businesses, right? And we'll talk about well-established businesses beyond that. But let's start with a startup. So for a startup that's saying, "Hey, I want to get out here," they see, you know, vibe coding or whatever, right? You know, and it seems like I'm jumping all over the place, but these are the questions I get that I answer. But me being the professional that I am and the business person I am, I like to get another expert on with me, so that way, you can know I'm not just telling you this, right? So for a startup that comes in and says, "Hey, I want to kind of go in. I see all of these tools. I see all these courses about 10x your business. Do this, do that." They simplify it, even though for you and I it may be pretty simple. They oversimplify it for the end user who says, "Okay, I'm going to invest this money," and then they don't do anything with their LLMs, and then they invest the money again, and they don't know, just because they don't know what tools to use, what models to use, or they don't have the strategy. How would you approach a startup with a strategy, that might actually be a deep mind for business, in getting AI implemented from the start?
Yeah, I think if you look at the startup economy, um, some startups are anti-education. So that 20-year-old who say, I'm not going to university, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking on a loan for however many months of years in of my life, paying
Mm-hmm.
off that debt. There's no success outcome. So if you think about it from a business perspective, you should be doing the same thing. A 20-year-old is asking, is a 4-year university worth it for me? Same with a business owner. Is it worth it for me to go to school for 8 weeks to learn about some universal use case, then come back to my business, then realize that universal use case has nothing to do with my business? Right? You took out the money to pay for that course and you spent the time there, but at the end you realize that that's not really what you needed. What you needed was a strategical understanding, not a tactical deployment understanding, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
not deploying an AI system, you are babysitting an AI system. Two different understanding of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're a maintainer versus a practitioner versus a developer, you have to know what it is that you're supposed to do. But nobody can teach you that unless you have a personal time into that space. Or say, for example, I sit down with AT and I ask him, hey, what business are you running? Why is it run this way? And how does it change with AI impact? How do you run it
Mm-hmm.
differently with AI? What happens to your CapEx and OpEx 5 years from now versus how it is today? Now we're talking in within an hour, I can give you 45 different ideas. And now for next 3 hours, we can sit through those 45 ideas and say, none of these things exactly applies to you except for these four and a half ones, right? Four and a half means three of them you will execute by tomorrow, and one of them you just have to hold on to because that's the whole strategy behind it. Because we're going to reverse engineer from 5 years in front of you to say, what can you do today? Those three things you can do in the next 24 hours. What can you do in the next 24 days? Can you deploy that? Can you generate revenue in the next 6 months using this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Conversation goes from you going to school for 4 years or going to a boot camp for 8 weeks. Now it's very personalized to your needs. Like I said, it starts with opportunity, but you have to optimize it. So opportunity is those 45 things, but when you optimize it, you only realize you only need 4.5, right?
Gotcha.
But you have to understand the risk behind it. Just because you think you're going to make money off of it does not mean that's the case. Because if you get attacked one time in a cybersecurity incident, that 6 months of plan goes out the window. There's no recovery from that, right? So you have to do things that are, I have to do something today, and then I have to keep investing and mature that system. So that way, even if I do get attacked, I have some other ways around to recover from it, right? And recovery in IT system is not same as recovering from AI system, because there's a lot of data work that you have to do. There's a lot of processing you have to do. You have to have a data engine. So depending on what it is that you're shielding from the attackers, no matter what they attack, as long as they don't attack the core of your system, you have better recovery than IT systems. And
Right.
there's just a whole ways to talk about it, but that's the kind of technical gist of what do you have to deal with, say, in 4 hours or 8 hours of conversation.
And this is something that I see as a developer myself. I see this happening, and this might be of some insight to help other developers that are out there that are in the web space doing web development, doing ERP, doing maintenance, SaaS app development, or whatnot. You have all of these vibe coding apps that companies will start up. Startups will start with, say, hey, I need to speak, tell the app what I want, and now it's done. Now I have an MVP to run. But now when it comes to updates and it comes to maintenance and whatnot, now all of a sudden it goes to, uh, I want to use nice terms here. It kind of trashes the application because now you have cross version sections that are used in the back end that AI is looking at, which in their operation are great. But the deal is now you're moving from PHP 8.2 to 8.3. You're using the latest and the greatest from the last 20,000 instructions that it got. So I guess I'll say that to say people that are jumping into vibe coding to sell something and then it's not expandable. What's the importance of learning the prompting and having the strategic engineering there with them? Is it just that, at first it's like I need a developer to do it all for me, but now I can save on this cost. I can vibe code it out, but now you need a developer and an engineer to make sure that it stays the same and everything. Speak more on the importance of that and how that's a part of a deep mind.
Yeah, DeepMind has multiple configurations. So depending on who's in the table and what are they asking. So let's say, for example, you're the attendee of the DeepMind conversation and you're asking about vibe coding. So if you think about it from the three different perspective, is it interoperable? Is it scalable? And is it sustainable? So I don't know if I mentioned this to you last time, but it's called the KISS framework. So keep it stupid simple. But now we're talking about keep it interoperable, scalable, and sustainable, right? The KISS
Yes.
framework for AI. Vibe coding is interoperable, and also it's possible to scale it because you mentioned, you want to do version iterations, correct? So it's possibly is a scalable, but it's not sustainable in most cases because of the framework that was put in to the interoperability and scalability, right? Because easy to understand interoperability, scalability, but the problem is sustainability. Sustainability could be your maintenance problem, your people problem, your process problem, or like you said, the new version of technology, right? But the worst one is the cybersecurity attack, right? So if somebody was to take it over because you left an API key out into the GitHub, there's no coming back from that anytime soon, right?
Right.
And it's going to happen because you gave your baby to somebody else and now they put the API key out into GitHub. Not your fault, but again, it's your people problem, just like you have a process problem. So the sort of vibe coding is a great promise, but let me reverse that into the developer world. A lot of the developers are kind of self-doubting the fact that software engineers and all these other people are going to lose their job. No, they won't. No, they won't.
Right.
You're not a developer anymore. You're a troubleshooting guy. You're a mechanic that's going to fix the maintenance speed. So just to give you an example, in IT space, we call it DevOps. That's where the KISS comes from, right? So in the MLOps in the MLOps space, it is the KISS, like that keep it interoperable, scalable, and sustainable, means that if you have to sustain it, what happens after you deploy it? How do you maintain and how do you trigger the actions that you need that you didn't need in an IT system that was based on DevOps, right? DevOps is pushing a lot of codes. Pushing a lot of codes means that you hit the ceiling continuously, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the ML ops, that system doesn't hit the ceiling, it starts drifting because it breaks through the ceilings, but it doesn't know what direction to go in. So,
Right.
yes, you can have a misalignment of 2 degrees. By the time you reach the moon, you realize that I'm far from the moon, actually. I'm going to head into the Mars because
Yeah,
that two
yeah.
degrees catches up to you eventually, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
MLOps space is not as simple as IT ops or your DevOps, right? Because if you know about MLOps, one thing you're going to realize is that you have no idea how bad data ops goes.
Right. Right.
Right? And and then your AI ops is even further off, and your LLM ops is not helping either. LLM ops means your things that you download into your laptop as your chatbot, right? So you have a whole lot of complication in vibe coding, but once you hear these terminologies, how many layers that goes into vibe coding, all of a sudden you say, well, let me fix my people process first, so that way I can do vibe coding because you have to vibe code. And this is the possibility that the developers are not seeing, which is that the software engineers that are being threatened by not having job today, they really have to start thinking about the end users that will become the end developers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say that again because end users that are end developers means that they will code their way out of the workflow that they are manually working on today. But a system engineer, like a software engineer, has to be present for to orchestrate all these things that our end developers are creating. Because end developers are not going to secure those systems. A system engineer has to secure the system. Since
Gotcha.
system engineer has to maintain and trigger those systems using observability tools,
Mm-hmm.
Splunk, many other tools that are uh, paid by the enterprise that are not going anywhere, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's software engineers that is going to be in a higher demand than what they are today, and I say that with high confidence that we only have 1% of the software engineers that we need today. We need 99% more. And 2036 will be full of software engineers, no matter if they're end developers or they're just system supporters.
You know, we're coming up with an enterprise product to help us scale. So now that doing the 10x, the 100x or whatever, is something that happens while being sustainable. Scalable and sustainable. Interoperability. Keep the interoperability, the scalability, and the sustainability. Right. A new KISS method and whatnot. So there shouldn't be much of a worry out there. There's just new opportunity, a ton of new opportunity that's out there.
Yeah, it's a shift because people will not understand this for a long period of time because we've been doing this for a long period of time where we've been actually researching troubleshooting mechanism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because back in 2015, what used to take, say, months and months of work to develop a machine learning or AI tool. So
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, what I would call a CRM system that took me 9 months just to say, here's a database for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That database problem has been solved in 2022. And then that whole customer data acquisition process by 2024 was not a problem at all,
Right.
right? And then marketing piece by 2025 was absolutely fixed. So if I had that 10 years ago, I would have been better off. But 10 years later, I do have it, right? But it came in a chunk.
Mm-hmm.
So your problems don't go away overnight. You solve it over a period of time that you have to really keep your eyes on the ground and say, things are going to shift rapidly. Things are going to move even faster than how it is moving today, right?
Right. Right.
So you have to develop a people in the process side of things in order to keep up with these changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what used to take 10 months to do, now it takes 10 minutes. Great, but that does not mean the complication has gone away, right?
True. True.
Complication is just different. It's different types of complications. So the database is not longer a problem. Data acquisition is no longer a problem. Market is no longer a problem. But that also means that your competition is doing the same thing as you, right? How do you stand out now is a whole nother questions that even if you started at 10 years ago and 10 years later, you're asking yourself, like, how do I stand out in the next 10 years? Because everybody can do the same thing that I've been doing for the last 10 years, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so, there's lots of things in demand right now that companies will have to reevaluate their value proposition to the customer because the
Mm-hmm.
customer has an alternative now. And, like I said, SaaS apocalypse is part of the conversation, but SaaS is not the only product out in the Wall Street, right? There's a lot of supply chain issues. There's a lot of ARAP issues like account receivable and account payable, agentic framework that agents are taking payments and agents are making payments are going to be a chunk of problem that will fix itself through chunks, right?
Right,
So
right.
just to give you an example, 8 years ago, we started, partnering with other developers, other, enthusiasts, other whatever they are. We said, how do we teach you about AI? So they said, well, teach me about AI from day one. I said, how about I start you from the day 100, and then you work your way back to day one,
Right.
right? The reason we did that is to say, if you learn about troubleshooting the way you would fix it as a non-techie, we get to learn from how it is that you fix it, because we can no way in ever in human history, I don't think I can simulate a human brain that is not mine.
True, true.
I can simulate my own brain to like, okay, I get that. I see it right in the mirror, right? But you cannot mimic somebody else's brain. So the way we did that, we actually had them kind of go through a workflow in their head to say, like, if I had this problem and I'm the subject matter expert of this field, how do I solve this problem and how do I reverse engineer it? And through our little assistance, they were able to reverse engineer it. Good problems that we're talking about is the edge LLM. Like, we download a large language model on our computer and I said, what are the limitations of this large language model? Like, deploying is easy, but what troubles do we run into on day 10 or day 20? And if
Mm-hmm.
we run into that day 20, how can we minimize the amount of time it takes to fix that edge LLM? Do you see where I'm going with this?
Oh,
It's a
absolutely.
whole lot of layers that you have to understand, but understanding that fact that things are changing and you have to have a new types of way of doing business, not just to, bring your costs down, just to, keep your customers and engage more customers and, find more customers. Those sort of things are changing rapidly. And going back to the agent conversation, your agents are not your employee. If those agents don't belong to you, they're not your employee. If you think they belong to you because somebody gave it to you, they can snatch that away anytime they want, right?
See,
So you have to have those kind of uh, business resiliency as well, along with repositioning your value proposition.
everyone, we're not going to get this in all in one podcast in one session or whatnot. So this is where I implore you to reach out. You can have the AI Deep Mind for Business. You can order a session, one-on-one session right now. I can get a CFO on. We can get on. We can take you through the details. You have your questions answered. Look at your strategy or whatnot. So I just want to let you know that. So there is a way to do that. We'll provide information on how you can get started with us and help your company when it comes to growth and scale beyond just having an agent, but understanding what the agent is and understanding what the human involvement is in making sure that you have a scalable and a sustainable and a scalable product or process that will help you 10x and carry you throughout the future. So, yeah, I want you guys to get in contact for your AI Deep Mind in Business session. Asif is here. I'm here. We're available to that, and and for you enterprise corporations who are trying to understand how to get your employees um, fully acclimated, fully engaged, and making sure that you can train the models and use them properly while protecting your intellectual property. That's one of the things that we'll attack in the future and everything. Asif, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. I know we can't get it all in one session. I got a lot going on in my mind, and you have a lot to offer and everything like that. And I want to offer this to everyone.
This is not the only conversation we're going to have. So here's the banner right here. Here's the contact information for both of us, right? So we're going to have another conversation soon because what happens with this conversation is that you get more questions eventually, right? So
Right.
now we're going to do another event and then we say, hey, these are the questions that came up. Let's answer them, right?
Mm-hmm.
1 day session between breakfast and lunch means that it really personalizes in person, right? We're not doing it virtually. We're not doing it on Zoom. If you insist on doing it on Zoom because of your situation, that's fine. I don't mind doing it online. But let's meet for breakfast, right? We can eat some good food, chat a little bit, walk through some business opportunities, and then by lunchtime you're going to realize that you have to optimize for a lot of things
Sure.
because we're gonna give you the full forest view and then say pick a tree, let's optimize that.
Absolutely.
You're not going to get that from every places you go to for breakfast and lunch, right? With
Right.
us, you're going to get that personalized attention for your specific business, your specific needs, your type of employees that you hire, or your team that you have developed over the last 10 years. You have a legacy system that you want to do digital transformation for. But at the end of the day, before you leave, like preferably say at the end of the day, like 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock, because you've been there for 7 or 8 hours, you're going to realize that you've learned a lot, right? And a lot. But that does not mean that's the end of learning, because now we want you to do something. We want you to do something that we can say, give yourself a shot and try this in the next 24 hours. Because this is the minimal amount of risk that you will take in the next 24 hours that you can get started with artificial intelligence. And if you accept the risk even further, you can deploy something in the next 24 days. And this is not saying that, oh, Asif, you're just going to try me out. No, we've done this for many corporations where they went from zero to hero over 24 hours, if not less than 30 days. We challenge them to say, deploy this and see how much of a return on investment you get. So if it's a breakfast and lunch session, that's fine. I know a lot of people are busy. They say like, I don't want to do it for a whole 8 hours. How about we just do it for 4? So we meet at like 11:30, be done by 2:30, have a lunch somewhere in between that. We can come to your conference center. We can meet you in a restaurant. We can meet you in an executive tower somewhere. That's fine. I mean, whichever you're comfortable with. But the point is, we want you to take action. We want you to get started. And if AT can, emphasize this, I emphasize this all the time. In the next 24 hours, if you're collecting data, you're winning. Because no matter how much data you have collected over the last however many years, these data are not enough. You need more data, because your AI will work differently if you start collecting those data in advance. So that's one of the things that you can very easily start in the next 24 hours, along with changing some of your business process that will help you to position for these artificial intelligence use cases. So that's the logistics. It's one day. We don't want to take weeks after weeks of your time, because that's not what we specialize on.
Right,
We don't
right.
want to take you away from your business for week in, week out, right? Give us one day. We will show you some things that I guarantee you know all sorts of tools, but you don't know the full forest. We know the full forest.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, my name is Asif Haider, and I've been working on AI space for the last 10 years. And prior to that, I was in the Air Force for 10 years. In the Air Force specifically, I've worked on anti-terrorism and force protection. I've worked with a lot of hardwares. So I really have a lot of, heart for people that are going through a process, right? Because that's how we used to get things done in the Air Force, is that we understand the process very well, and we got our day-to-day jobs, day-to-day operation to a minimal risk. Because in force protection, that's what you have to do. You have to minimize all the risk in all the places. And in the business world, after I got out of the Air Force, I realized it's the same concept. It's just you have to minimize the risk, and you have to make more money while you're minimizing those risks, and also save money while you're taking the minimal amount of risk. So in 10 years of Air Force and 10 years in the AI space, these days I'm realizing that people are asking a lot of questions, and the answer is coming from ChatGPT. Well, ChatGPT cannot give you the full spectrum, and it cannot personalize it to you the way you need it. So we want to bring the human connections back into the equation, where somebody like AT and myself will have a sit down, and over a dinner we'll discuss so many topics and conversation, and I realize that there's some things that are unknown to AT that I can contribute to, just like AT contributes to my unknown. And it benefits us both, because I see a perspective that he has and a perspective that I share. All of a sudden, it validates both of our concerns, validates our knowledge. And now that we have a lot of knowing from that knowledge, we can start doing things. And one of the things that me and AT has been really fan of is the fact that how do we get to start using AI differently for our business purposes? Not just the way Neighbor Jones's uses AI, but for our businesses specifically. And that means better return on investment. That is better return on data. That means it's a better return on our energy. So I really wanted to get in front of AT and introduce myself. And now I'll let AT introduce himself as well.
Sure thing. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm AT, founder of Circulate Black. I'm also founder of Kashande Technology, which is my digital systems company. Anything to stand you up digitally online and even in the back end, front end and back end, and whatnot. 20, 25 years, 26 years in business doing that. And I kind of represent the small to medium sized business moving into the enterprise size business, right? And I still remember all of the things that and the transitions along the way that happened, mostly in entertainment and television. But I also got a chance to do some work with government, city and county as well, and ministry based services. And what happened is that in this transition, in this change, like Asif said, we've been working behind the scenes. I've been working behind the scenes using AI, but now I'm bringing it to a forefront because I'm the type of person that just says, "Hey, let me study this thing." I'm probably one of the last adopters, but then an early adopter when it comes to implementing the strategy properly, right? So I'm the one that says, "Okay, while there are people afraid of it, I embrace it. I run into it or whatnot." And I understood how it could help the strategies that I have. It could show me what I'm missing, and then it can help me fine tune with, teaming up with someone like Asif to make sure that I build in sustainability and scalability in everything that I'm doing. So for that, I want to be able to bring that to you. I want to bring that to my community as well, because we have a history. Let's be honest, we have a history of things getting to us last, right? But I want to make sure that we're at the seats and not be afraid of being able to sit in front of, other people and other professionals who are in this AI space. And I want to bridge the gap, remove the fear, implement the processes, show you how those processes can be how they can benefit you when you implement an AI strategy and a model. And even if you go the clone route or when you go the clone route, how to make sure that that is responding to a certain level of your business and serving your clientele well, and also churning and turning revenue into your company, right? So you want it to be a sales engine. It's not a replacement for your sales process. It's an enhancement to it as a sales engine, okay? And how to properly use that. As well, making sure that employees that are jumping all over it everywhere beyond just Chat GPT, how they can use it to improve and kind of expedite some of the services that they have to deliver in a fast-paced economy, right? And to show up and meet deadlines, at a higher rate with more accuracy, right? And basically just taking what they know, multiplying it, and delivering it, right? So deliverability is one thing. You don't have to be afraid of AI. You don't have to be afraid of the next level. You're not being replaced. You're actually being transformed so that you can do more better, right? And so I want to bridge the gap between that and make sure that everyone can sit in a room and everyone can benefit from it. So AT, founder of CirculateBlack.com, also founder of Kashande Technology by the brand of Kashande Digital. And at any point in time, you can reach out to myself or Asif to understand or be a part of the Deep Mind for Business.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to